worksheet that we had done, quadratic attributes, worksheet 3. And to start off with, we are going to label all these points on a quadratic equation. And so first, we'll label this top point right here. So this is called a couple of things, but first, it is called the vertex. And the biggest thing about the vertex is whenever we're asking for a vertex answer, that it is always the x and the y. So the vertex is always going to be the very top, or if it was opening down, then it would be the very bottom. It is where the graph starts to turn, so you can see it's going up and then it turns and starts going down, so that's the vertex, that very top. And we always label it with the x and the y. It is also referred to as the max if it's on top, the minimum if it's on bottom. Now, with the max, we only talk about the y-coordinate. So when you're talking about the max, you're just referring to how tall, or if it was going upside down, how short it is. Okay? All right, so that used vertex. It used maximum. This is not opening down, so there will be no minimum. And then we don't use the word starting point. All right, so the next easiest point, I think, would be this point right here, which would be called the y-intercept. The y-intercept is just where the graph crosses the y-axis right here. Okay. And then we have this point right here has 3 names. It is the x-intercept because it is touching the x-axis. It is also known as the 0, which we see a lot with quadratics. They ask for the 0. And then it's also known as the solution. And so if they ever ask, what is the solution is where it's touching the x-axis. So that would be these 3 right here. And then last is this line right here, which splits this in half. And anytime you have something that splits it directly in half, and the left-hand side is equal to the right-hand side, then that's called symmetry. And so these two sides kind of look like mirror opposites of each other. And so this line right here is called the axis of symmetry, which we usually put AOS, the axis of symmetry. And then where the vertex, you can see it goes through the vertex. The vertex uses the x and the y. The max is just the y. The axis of symmetry is going to be the x. And it is an x equals equation. Okay? So these are your major points. Now, this point right here is just like this one over here. It has the same 3 names because it's touching the x-axis, the x-intercept, the 0, and the solution. All right, so let's take a look at our questions. So all these questions right here are going to refer to this right here, and then we'll come over here and answer the same questions for this one. So right off the bat, they want the vertex. So the vertex would be the very highest point right here. And remember, it's always the x and then the y. So this would be, the x would be 3, comma, and then 4. So 3, comma, 4. Okay, so always the x and then the y. Okay, so what is the max or the min? Well, in this case, if it's looks like this right here, it's got a maximum. Okay, so it's got a very top to it, and so that's a maximum. So remember, the max or the min, doesn't matter which one, but this is the max. They always do just the y-coordinate. So the vertex was the x and the y. This is just going to be the y. So the answer would just be 4. So right there, just 4. All right, the axis of symmetry is going to be the line that splits this in half. So if we were to draw a line that split this in half, and it has to be an x equals equation. And it's x equals, and then where does this cross the x-axis? So x equals, and it crosses the x-axis at 3. And you can see how all of these are related right here. They all kind of go through this point. So 3, 4 was the vertex. The maximum is just 4, which was the y-coordinate of the vertex. And then the axis of symmetry was x equals 3, which was the x-coordinate of the vertex. So they're all connected to each other. All right, so now they want to know where the zeros are. Okay, so if you remember, zeros are where it crosses the x-axis. And this is kind of hard to see. A lot of kids, when they see this, think this is a 6 right here. But you can see it's 6 and 7 right there. 4 is right there. That's actually 5. And so one of my zeros is going to be 5. And the other 0, where it crosses the x-axis, is going to be 1. So all we're looking for, a 0 is an x-intercept. And it's just where does it cross the x-axis. Okay, so it crosses at 1 and it crosses at 5 right there. All right, the opening direction is from the vertex, which way are these lines going? And you can tell from the vertex they're going downward. So this is opening down. And then the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So we'll go down here. Where does that cross the y-axis? Looks like it crosses right there at 5. It's kind of hard to tell. That's a -5. So remember, if it's below the x-axis, that's when it starts going to the negative number. So this would be -5 right there. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. So once again, we're looking for the vertex. This is kind of weird right here. It's easy to tell what the x-coordinate is, but the y-coordinate, this is going by 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And they're negatives because it's below the x-axis. So, but this is in between. And so some kids put like -8.5, but this would be -9. So that would be -9 right there. All right, so what is our vertex? So remember our vertex, which is right here, we want the x and the y. We always put the x first. So -4, -9. Okay, so what is the max? In this case, I'm sorry, the way this is shaped, this would be a minimum. It's on the very bottom. And so the minimum or the maximum always is just the y-coordinate. So the y-coordinate would just be -9. Then the axis of symmetry is going to split this in half. And so if we split that in half, we know axis of symmetry is always x equals, and then it's x equals wherever it crosses the x-axis, and so it crosses at -4. So x equals -4. Okay, what are the zeros? So zeros are where it crosses the x-axis. And so the zeros are going to be, it looks like that's -7 and -1 is where it crosses. So -7 and -1. So from the vertex, my lines are going up. So this is opening up. And then the y-intercept, where does this cross the y-axis? This is kind of tough right here. We always get different things. It looks like it's just above 6 and just below 8, so we'll call that 7 right there. So that one right there is a little bit tough. So the y-intercept would be 7. If you ended up putting 6 or 8 on that, I typically take it because it's really tough to see. So, all right. Thank you very much.